Welcome back to the 99, where we are focused on brewing a better competitive commander. I am your host, Patrick Marlett, and today we'll be focusing on hidden gems, but this time not in a given color, but a particular type. This time, we'll be discussing lands. Phyrexian Tower, Gaia's Cradle, the Tabernacle of Pendrell Vale, all fantastic cards, however, they are not hidden gems. Nuh-uh. They won't be in the topic of discussion today. These are all undervalued cards and underrated cards, and mostly under $30 if I'm not mistaken. So despite any budget constraints, you should be able to manage to fit any of these into one of your lists, and I'll stipulate which list these belong in before we talk about the card. And guys, if you want to pick up any of the lands I mentioned today, the best way to do so is via the link in the description over at TCG Player. You want to help yourself and help the channel? Well, that is the best way to do so, because you'll be finding the best prices online for your packs, singles, and more, as well as having a portion of those proceeds go to the 99. So thank you very much for making that choice, as well as any Anchor and or Patreon members. Guys, if you want to help support us directly, you can do so by those two services. And I thank you guys so much for your continued support, especially over on Patreon. And some things to note about that: I've been doing this more frequently, but weekly and bi-weekly we do pickup games with the Brew Baby crew. So if you're a member of the Discord and a member of the Patreon, we use that for voice chat, and we do pickup games on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. So if you've been wanting to check out some of the lists we discuss on the channel, all the deck techs and more, well, that is the best way to do so. People always ask me, I'd love to see gameplay of this. Well, you can do so directly with me as a Patreon member. So that is an extra benefit. And all my Patreon members know this already, but leading up to 99, you'll be thanked at the very end of this video with a special thank you. Always random, but always good, I think. But leading up to 99, we'll figure out what we do after that. Now, I'll be following along with my list off to the side, so if you see me looking away from you, it's not because I don't like you, it's because I have a lot of cards to talk about and I don't remember them off the top of my head, and they're cataloged perfectly. They're perfectly cataloged here. I'm going to leave them for you in a pinned comment down below so you can check out all of these in your own time, or just follow along with the video as we discuss them. But the first cards I'm going to talk about are artifact recovery pieces. And there's two in this category that I think are criminally underplayed and extremely good. I'm going to start with in alphabetical order with the one that I think is of better value: Academy Ruins. Academy Ruins is a legendary land that taps for a generic, and for a generic and a blue, you can tap it, put target artifact card from your graveyard on top of your library. But Pat doesn't play blue. Well, the crazy thing is, the people I see play blue with a threshold of 18 or more artifacts could certainly afford to play this. And anytime you have an artifact-centric card, my threshold for that, whether it's Metalcraft on Mox Opal, whatever the scenario, I highly recommend you have at least 18 artifacts in that list to get the most benefit from it. That has been the threshold of viability for most of these, in my opinion. And this card and the next card I'll be discussing are mainly for artifact-heavy lists that depend on their artifacts for a win condition: an Aetherflux Reservoir, a Phyrexian Altar, an Ashnod's Altar. I can name 100 cards that combo that require you to have an artifact on the field, and these two cards are going to help you get them back. So we have Academy Ruins and Buried Ruin. Similar naming, interesting. Land, tap for a generic, similar effect. 2, tap, sacrifice Buried Ruin. Return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. So I would say the same list that would want Academy Ruin would probably want this. However, depending on how many colors are in your list, if it's dual color or monocolor, you can easily slot these in. Generic is going to be fine. 3 color to 4 color, you're a little bit greedier with your mana base. You need to find those colors. So having generic isn't very good unless your commander filters generic mana into colored mana, which I'm sure there's some legendary that does that. The benefit here with Buried Ruin over Academy is that it puts it into your hand. So if you're trying to combo off still on that same turn, you can go ahead, crank this, grab the artifact, and still attempt to go off. Where Academy Ruin, you do need the additional step of, I don't know, tapping your Sensei's top to draw it off the top, right? Academy is much better in the long run because it allows you to just tap it on your upkeep and draw the card, right? Your mana crypt was blown up consequently from a meltdown that occurred, right? A red card. I'll leave it on the screen. Everyone should be playing Meltdown. Did I do Hidden Gems Red yet? I don't think so. Meltdown is on there. I'm not going to say what it does. It's on the screen. You can read it. If you're listening to this in podcast form, I'm sorry. Look that card up. Lands today. So you had your stuff blown up by Meltdown. Academy Ruins lets you get it back. So you still have the value. As a matter of fact, if I had Academy Ruins out, I would run some mass artifact destruction because I know I'm going to come out on top. And what's interesting about the meta currently is that it's creature heavy, but it is still artifact dependent. There are a lot of lists that are playing greedy, tapping out to play artifact mana. So punish them and help yourself out with one of those 2 artifact recovery cards. I love both of them. I used for a long time Buried Ruin in Teshar, and there are times where I imagine slotting it back in. It's very good. Despite the fact that most of the cards recover things anyways, artifacts in particular, it's still of value. Now the next cards I want to talk about, they all do the same thing, essentially. But one of them is far and away better at doing this, and this is, I'm going to say creature recovery, but it's regenerate. It's your regenerate lands. Again, one of these, better than the others. Guess which one it is. And I've talked about this one before. It's the only card I'm going to reiterate on the Hidden Gems segment because it is just that good. However, we have Elephant Graveyard, Swarm Yard, and Yavimaya Hollow. Elephant Graveyard allows you to tap to add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool or regenerate an elephant or mammoth. That has been eroded to just elephant. I'm sorry, mammoth fans. The mammoths are dead. They were literally extinct with the Ice Age. Swarm Yard. It is a land that taps for generic and or taps to regenerate target insect, rat, spider, or squirrel. Slightly more relevant. You're starting to see the uses here. If you have a commander that is one of those things, there's a lot of legendary spiders out there. This is a good card for you. There's a lot of legendary rats out there. This is a good card for you. And lastly, Yavimaya Hollow. Legendary land, you can tap it for generic or pay a green and tap it to regenerate target creature. Now note, with every single one of these cards, it's not target creature you control, it's any target creature. I only mention this because Yavimaya Hollow in a few chance scenarios is going to be very good at keeping up a hate bear that your opponent controls that you are benefiting from. If you don't care that a Hushbringer is out, then keep Hushbringer out with Yavimaya Hollow. That Thassa's Oracle player, and that's 90% of competitive Commander at this point, they're going to really want to get rid of that Hushbringer, right? They're going to want to do that. So when you crop rot during their combo, what is this guy doing? What an asshole. They probably think you're just doing that to slow down the game. And you are, slightly. But when you drop Yavimaya Hollow and save that Hushbringer, they're going to feel really bad about letting you resolve that crop rotation. I've had my butt saved so many times by Yavimaya Hollow. It's just one of my favorite cards. It's a all-star in Wart. If you haven't seen my Wart deck tech or played against my Wart list, you'll know I really like Yavimaya Hollow. It's a good card. Whenever you crop rot and you conspire that, Yavimaya Hollow, Gaia's Cradle. It's on the same level as Gaia's Cradle. That's how you know it's good. Is it $400 to $500 worth of value? Yeah, it is. And same story for these other cards. Guys, if you have a creature of this subtyping that could benefit from being regenerated, just not removed, right? So you tap this before the mass destruction. You don't bring that thing back. It just never died. This is so good. I love all these cards. I wish there were more benefits for Elephant Graveyard. Unfortunately, I don't believe there's a legendary elephant. I think there is, but it's like an uncard. So right, we're not playing with that unless you're playing friendly funsy Magic Commander. Swarm Yard, on the other hand, of value, this is close to $30. It's probably like 20 plus at this point. Yavimaya Hollow is probably going to be the most expensive on this list. I picked up my copies for around 30, 35, but they are going up. And the more people talk about them, shame, they're probably going to go up. So if you can, I would highly suggest you just own Yavimaya Hollow because it's very good. You're going to want it eventually, and you're going to see why. The next cards we want to talk about, these are oh so good. So these are threshold lands. And I'm not talking about Nantuko Monastery, okay? That just slipped its way into this category. However, I'm talking about the Wooburg threshold lands, and they should be on the screen now. We have Barbarian Ring, Cabal Pit, Centaur Garden, Cephalid Coliseum, and Nomad Stadium. And wouldn't you know it, the white one happens to be the worst of the threshold effects. It's funny that John Avon did all the usable ones, and then David Martin, I'm so sorry for you, man. David Martin got Nomad Stadium. They all basically operate the same. They don't come into play tapped. You get the color you need, hopefully when you need it, right? So you get to add one color of the given card. So Barbarian Ring is red. You get to tap it for a mountain. They all deal 1 damage to you in this instance, right? However, for a Threshold, and remember, Threshold is when you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard. Doesn't care about the typing. You can, any one of these, and I'll just read off Barbarian Ring, pay a red, tap it, sacrifice Barbarian Ring. Barbarian Ring deals 2 damage to target creature or player. Okay, so if for some reason the Adnaz player, the Necro player just got that greedy, punish them. Torbrand, punish them. Red source? Maybe not. Should be considered a red source. However, 2 damage, not always enough, but it is enough to kill a bunch of hate bears. It is enough to kill the Dark Confidant. It is enough to kill the Notion Thief. And same story with Cabal Pit. If you tap Cabal Pit out for a swamp, sacrifice it, -2, -2, kill the thing. Barbarian Ring, arguably better of the two because you have more options so far as targets are concerned. However, all very good. And mind you, Barbarian Ring, it has been eroded to any targets you can hit Planeswalkers with Barbarian Ring, so that is very good. Same story with Centaur Garden. You can pay a green, tap it, sacrifice it, give +3/+3. This is obviously in a list where damage matters. Someone like Marwyn, someone like Savala, these are the lists you can see, or these have play in, and you should see them in. And if you're not playing them, and you don't see it in your list, add it. Cephalid Coliseum, arguably the most used, I'll say. Every list that can run Cephalid Coliseum likely does, so it's not necessarily a hidden gem. However, if you haven't heard of it, you can pay a blue, tap it, sacrifice Cephalid Coliseum, target player draws 3 cards, then discards 3 cards from his or her hand. Target player draws 3 cards. Okay, so you're not winning with Labman anymore. Oh, you want to do the Thassa thing. I'm just going to ruin you right now. Draw 3 cards. Draw 3 cards for me. You're going to feel really bad. A little spicy losing to Cephalid Coliseum. Crop rotation Cephalid? I've never seen that, but I put it out there, Simic players. Go ahead. Your challenge for the week. Beat, with your Kinnan list, beat someone who goes for the Thassa win by crop rotating a Cephalid Coliseum and forcing them to draw nothing. Do that. Do that, report back to me, tell me how you felt. I'm sure it was great. Now, my favorite land on this list. It came out recently. This is a card from War of the Spark. I absolutely love this land. I don't play it in enough decks. I have it in 2. One that we've talked about, Teshar. It's a little card called Blast Zone. So Blast Zone enters the battlefield with a charge counter on it. What do those do? You can tap it for generic. It taps for generic. That's useful. XX tap, put X charge counters on Blast Zone. Okay, cool. Pay 3, tap it, sacrifice Blast Zone, destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost equal to the number of charge counters on Blast Zone. This is just to clear the board of any potential threat that's bothering you. Our Patreon members know, one of the Brew Baby crew. I used Blast Zone on his, what's the Isochron Scepter Dramatic Reversal? That felt good. I know it didn't for you, and I'm sorry. I'm not going to call you out, but I remember that day. Blast Zone, so good for so many reasons. In Teshar, you use it to clear Collector Oofs. You use it to clear all the 2 CMC rocks your opponents are playing, because they're very greedy these days. They gotta have that mana. They gotta get it somehow. They're not playing green these days. Destroy it. Destroy everything. And generally speaking, this is gonna be where all the other cards, I would highly suggest you slot them into a list that they can relevantly go into. Like if you have blue, play Cephalid Coliseum. If you have green, play Yapamaya Hollow. Those are very easy. Blast Zone, I would say that this can go into every list. However, you need to come out on top when this happens, right? So don't hurt yourself doing this. But if your list is deficient in some form of removal, right? Like you have a mono black list, this is actually a very good card for removing anything that might stop you from doing your Reanimator strategy, right? So the Grafdigger's Cages of the world, it comes in with the counters to handle that situation. And all you have to do, because it doesn't operate at sorcery speed, just pay 3 off turn, destroy that thing. Wait for some other stuff to hit the field first. Wait for the guy who plays the Mystic Remora. He's like, yeah, this is gonna be cool. Everyone plays non-creature, no one plays creatures. Well, yeah, they're gonna be suffering after Blaststone explodes. I love this card a lot. I highly recommend you check it out. It's cheap. I need to see how cheap this card is. $2, $2.50. Worth it. I bought 4 when they came out. I'm sure they were a little bit more expensive then too. I pre-ordered 4, so I'm like, that's gonna be a good card. Still doesn't see enough play though. Now this one's really fresh. There are 2 in this category. This is Hidden Gems Land Edition Draw. There's a few that work. I should mention one more. You know, I'm going to look that up for you guys, but I really like the third one I'll bring up. But Bonder's Enclave and Arch of Araska. I'll go ahead and read those for you now. And they operate in very different lists. Bonder's Enclave allows you to tap for generic and or 3 mana, draw a card, or tap it, draw a card, activate this ability only if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. Obviously, this isn't going to fit into every list. If your commander has a power of 4 or greater, Bonder's Enclave. Bonder's Enclave. Even if the list is triple color, just manage it. Card draw. Look, the thing is, when people say their deck is resilient, when someone says their deck is resilient, all they're really saying is that their commander draws you cards, right? Their deck draws them cards. There's something that functions in their list to draw them cards, but does their land draw them cards? That's resilience. Because no one's really touching lands, okay? No one really mainlines the strip mine for a Bonder's Enclave. So if you have a creature in your list like Savala, I play big dumb creatures all day, I'm drawing off of this card all the time. It makes Sylvan Tutor that less shitty, right? You just get it. Just get the card. Or if you're hurting on cards, get the card. Okay, no one's going to remove your Phyrexian Soul Gorger. No one's going to do that. You have an 8/8. Cool. At least in competitive. Maybe in a casual setting. This is even better in a casual setting. I can imagine all the creatures that are dropping, that are humongous. Just get a little bit of advantage for yourself. Now, Arch of Araska, this is very much for a stacks-centric list. This is one that's going to be slowing the game down. Doesn't want anyone to do anything for a while. Because Ascension, if you ascend by having 10 or more permanents, you get the city's blessing for the rest of the game. This is true in any game, but ascending isn't important for every list. You can tap it to add generic mana to your mana pool. Cool. So it's not useless otherwise. Pay 5. Draw a card, activate this ability only if you have city's blessing. Now, what I'm going to say about this, again, is not for every list. I use this in Balan. Every time I've played it, I've drawn a card. A list that's meant to slow the game down. And I would say 30%. 30% of your list is dedicated to slowing the game down, and you can effectively and consistently do so every game. And I mean get to turn 5, turn 6, turn 7, and onward every game. Arch of Araska is fantastic draw for that list. Yes, it's expensive. However, when a game drags on that long, if people are losing their resources or folks are missing their own draw engines, you'll be out on top just by having this. If it's 5 mana at the end of your opponent's turn leading into yours, you're up 2 cards. It's very good. Again, not for every list. Certainly not for every list. But it is for those stacks lists. Those stacks manders that want to slow the game down. And this is the other one I want to talk about. I didn't write it down, but honestly, not enough people play this card. Gyre Reach Sanitarium. So if you watch my Tiny Bones deck tech, you know I play this card in there because of the rummage effect, right? The loot effect, excuse me. So you tap it to add generic, or you pay 2, tap it, each player draws a card, then discards a card. This works really well with Chains of Mephistopheles, by the way. Super well with Chains. What's good about this card? You don't see it in every list, but there are a few choice lists, like Tiny Bones, that benefit from the discard. Not a lot of decks benefit from the discard, okay? There's only a few lists that really care about doing something with something in their graveyard. And you are giving them that benefit playing Gyre Reach Sanitarium, but for the most part, folks are just discarding, and it's the next land drop they could have had. And then they go for their draw on their turn, they don't find a land, they miss their land, and boo-hoo, they have a few less mana to do what they want to do. But it's never really groundbreaking for them. However, for you, if you have a lot of top deck tutors, if you need to get that card now, this can help you get there. I really like Gaia Reach Sanitarium. I think it's fantastic. Again, not for every list, but much like all the draw lands, again, they're very situationally beneficial. But do keep this one in your back pocket. It's very good. Now, this next card is super not for every list. And I'll say that this is going to fit into like a stacks list as well, and or just a mass land destruction, mass hate kind of build. So something like Zurgo would like this. Someone like Naheb likes this. Dreadhorde Champion. Beseiju, who shelters all. Legendary land, Beseiju, who shelters all. Comes into play tapped. Yeah, we don't like that. We don't like that part. Tap it, pay 2 life, Villas. Add 1 mana to your mana pool. If that mana is spent on an instant or sorcery spell, that spell can't be countered by spells or abilities. So this has obvious benefits. Do you know the mana, when you pay the life and you produce the mana, it doesn't need to go towards an instant or sorcery. It just means that instants and sorceries get the benefit of not being countered this turn, right? Whenever you use that mana. So something like Ravages of War, something like Obliterate. If you're trying to land a spell that just decimates the board, you're going to want to have that spell uncounterable. I don't want to deal with your interactions right now. It could be something petty even. It could be something as easy as having a hard caster deflecting SWAT, right? Someone removes your commander. Whatever the scenario, if there's a generic mana pip in the cost, Beseiju is going to help you get that spell off if it's instant or sorcery. But predominantly, I would suggest you mainline this tree, Beseiju, for those killer spells that just decimate the board, right? I know a lot of folks are against land hate, like mass land hate, mass destruction in general. But if you come out on top, and that is a part of your game plan, and you win through attrition by doing that, right? Like having Zurgo, right? Destroying all the things, and your guy being indestructible, he stays, and just everyone's on a clock. This card really helps you get there. Again, it's not for every list, but if you have some big dumb spells, right? You play extra paid. Then you want this. You just want it to happen. Stop trying to counter me. I like Beseiju a lot. I don't like that it comes in tapped. That is a flaw. However, it is very good for making sure you get to go off on your turn. Now, lastly, I like these a lot. We just had Triumph's release, and everyone forgot we haven't finished this cycle yet. Dual color cycle lands. Now, there are a handful here. We have Canyon Slough, Fetid Pools, Irrigated Farmland, Canyon Slough, Scattered Groves, and Sheltered Thicket. Now I'm going to read off Canyon S first. It is a swamp mountain, so if you're in Rakdos, you get to fetch this. Canyon S enters the battlefield tapped. Not good. However, it has a cycling cost of 2, so you can discard this card at any time to draw a card. Why are these good? Why are the dual colored cycle lands good? They're very good on a budget for the most part. I don't think any of these are overly expensive. The thing is, if your deck, you never want to start the game with one of these in your hand, but mid to late game, if you draw into this, it's not what you need. You have the option of drawing again, right? And you'll hopefully have the resources to make that dream come true. However, if you do need a multicolored land in one of these types, this is very good for you because it gives you that option. I like all of these dual colored. So Scattered Groves, I think, is probably, arguably, as well as Sheltered Thicket, the most valuable. Because there are things you could do with Forest, right? Like if you use Orcish Lumberjack, he cares about Forest. So even if you just put down the Scattered Groves or the Sheltered Thicket to have a Forest tapped, you can sack it to gain mana off of a creature like that. There are obviously benefits to having Forest into play beyond that as well. You have things like Utopia Sprawl that needs to enchant a forest. This just gives you a dual-colored forest. So I like those two the most. However, they're all plenty valuable for a list. Again, if your list is operating a little bit slower, this is a fine fetch on your first turn, right? We're talking about budget. Fetch lands these days. Good lord. However, these are still plenty usable. I would never recommend them in a triple colored list or beyond that, you know, unless you're budgetizing, then yes, they are fine. However, I think the answer for triple colored list is the triomes, right? So you would want something like Savai, Triome, whatever your deck colors are. What is that, Mardu? At any rate, dual color cycle lands, they're good to fill in the gaps in your list. If you're deficient on a color or need double white pips, yes, you're going to go for Scattered Groves, right? You want to cast Ranger Captain of Eos. If it means you have to get there a little bit slower or use your cycle off turn, that's okay. And there's plenty of instances where you can hold off on the fetch anyways. Plenty of times where people fetch that shock land and don't pay the 2 life. Just do it off turn, because the games usually don't pick up until after, at least in competitive, turn 2 and onward. Turn 1 is usually just a big setup phase. There's very few instances of a list being able to operate on turn 1 and net a win. With consistency, not many at all at this point. However, Godo, one of those lists. He can go off on turn 1 because of Treasonous Ogre. That's the only time you're going to hate fetching for that Scattered Grove if you just did that on your turn. So rule of thumb, tap it off turn, get it tapped, blam, you have it untapped on your turn. Then it's good. That's it for the hidden gem lands. Did I list all of them? Is there a hidden gem land that I missed? Do you play with deserts? Is there some desert strategy I'm missing here? There's a lot of cards, land typing, that have benefits on the field that go beyond the normal scope of your basic land. And these are just a handful. However, I do encourage you to run these in more list, in the list I advised. And now if I didn't stipulate a particular list for them, it's because they're good in every list, okay? Those threshold lands, they're good in pretty much every list that would benefit from having a land with an effect that kills something or buffs something. Obvious benefits, Cephalid Coliseum, stupid good. All these cards you should be considering and or playing, and if you want to pick them up, the best way to do so, I already said it, but I'm going to say it again, is via the link in the description. Guys, if you choose to use that link, you'll be helping out the channel with a portion of those proceeds. So no matter how big or small the purchase is, thank you so much for making that decision. And if you want to help the channel directly, you can do so via Anchor and or Patreon. And my Patreon members, you know what time it is. I had to pull up that list of members, and it's ever growing. I want to say a personal thank you to all of you guys for watching this show, but a special thanks to my Patreon members for helping support the channel and helping it grow. It really does mean a lot. And I say this every time, and I mean it the more every time. You guys are really the best. I love the conversations we have on Patreon and Discord. And I love the games we have, by the way. I'm trying to hold a game tonight, as a matter of fact, as of recording this. And I hope I see some of you later. But on that note, Nomad, Gunblade Knight, Austin, Gunblade like Final Fantasy VIII Gunblade? Thank you so much for your patronage. I love Final Fantasy VIII. I love the card game from Final Fantasy VIII, as a matter of fact. Tetramaster? Is that Final Fantasy IX? Anyways, Taylor, Paul, Jeffrey, thank you so much for your patronage. Ave, John, Just Me, the best Magic players I've seen. They watch this channel, that's why. They know all the hidden gems. Rory, Brian, Mikey Boy, thank you so much for your patronage. Trevor, Landers, Paul, Go. I say it every time, but your support goes a long way. I was talking about buying coffee with Patreon money in the last video. I literally went to Trader Joe's and bought espresso and some French roast. Thank you. That was like a 2-hour trip. It's not your fault, though. I'm not angry at you. Corwin, Schmamby Tenenbaum, Tim, and Adrian, thank you guys so much for your patronage. Tim, is that your last name? Really? I think we have one Tim. You know who I'm talking about. Is that really your last name? I'm a huge fan of Home Improvement. Carlos, Kevin, Sir Fluffykins, and Matthew, thank you so much for your patronage. Kevin, Submoxon, Adam, and Dante, thank you guys for your patronage. Sarah, Joshua, Matthew, Renell, thank you so much for supporting the channel. What was the first video you watched on the 99? I'm curious. What tickled your fancy here? What tickled you pink? Trent, Gregory, Harry, Dave? Same question. Thank you guys so much for your patronage. I'd love to know. I know a lot of guys were brought on, guys and gals, were really interested in the deck tech. So I'm glad to know that there's a space for that in the competitive scene. Y'all want to see stuff that's just a little off meta. That's pretty much everything I do. Leonardo, Christopher, Carl, and Craig, thank you so much for your patronage. Do you also want me to brew Gave? It's a conversation I had on Discord earlier. Speaking of brewing. Gave. Mason, Paul, Jake, Gulius, and Xiaofan, thank you so much for your patronage. Some longtime members among you. Bruno, Jason, Kev, Ali, Burton, and Josh. Thank you so much for your patronage. I have to flip pages now. Thank you so much for your patronage to all of you. We're so close to 99, by the way, at this point. Super close. Music video when we hit 99. That's a potential thing. We might do that. Clyde, Shaded, Frank, and Jarn, thank you so much for your patronage. It means the world here. Jared, Brendan, Shord, thank you so much for your patronage. There's no tiers here, by the way, guys. If you've hung on, and you're wondering, like, I don't know if I can be a Patreon member. All these people sound swell, though. There's no tier system. Y'all treated like equals here. $1, $10, $30, it's really up to you. So thank you, everyone who goes above and beyond. Nathan, Javier, Oliver, the Holy Knight. We've got a couple knights at our table. Thank you so much for your patronage. Sam, Running Red, Jordan, Luke, Leon, and Mace. You guys are the best. Thank you for helping make this show happen. I truly mean that. I'm so excited for the rest of this year. There's a lot of cool things I cannot wait to announce for you all. I just haven't solidified some ideas yet. However, my Patreon crew will know about them first. That is you guys. So thank you so much for hanging out with me on another episode of The 99. Again, my name is Patrick Marlett, and happy brewing, babies.